Some days are worse than others out there on the water, and you don't always know what you're going to get. Sometimes the weatherman says it's going to be a nice sunny day, but the next thing you know, you get something more like what we see here. You never quite know what to expect until you get out there, just like some of the unexpected things we'll see in this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. Our first story to make the boating news this week is going to take us down to Texas, where the Coast Guard made an unexpected discovery of its own this past week as they were doing random container checks in the port of Houston.
Oh, it's scratching, dude!
Upon further inspection, the Coast Guard found a container that had scratching noises and some sort of animal noise coming from it. Once they pulled the container down and actually broke it open, to their surprise, they found a container that's been sitting in the port now for about a week with a dog inside. The container itself was supposed to contain total cars that were originating from Houston about to be shipped overseas. Somehow the dog had found its way into the container during the loading process and had been trapped inside while the container was awaiting shipment. Her saviors claim when they got her, she was obviously hungry, tired, and thirsty. They gave her a little water and actually wound up taking her to the local animal shelter. According to reports, she's actually already been adopted from that shelter. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to take us over to the Gulf of Mexico, where several cruise goers got a little extra action this week when the Carnival Jubilee was on a 7-night Caribbean cruise when all of a sudden the crew wound up spotting two people in a kayak several miles off the Mexican coastline, causing the captain of the ship to come over the intercom alerting passengers that they were going to slightly divert to try and pick the two people up that they found. The two used their hands and oars to try and flag down the ship to indicate that they were in distress and in need of help. The cruise line then pulled alongside the two gentlemen, pulling them on board. Cruise officials claimed that the cruise line gave them food and medical help. One asked, the gentleman said that the reason they were out there is they were out fishing on their boat when all of a sudden the vessel sank, forcing them to abandon ship on the kayak that they had on board. The cruise line continued on to its next destination, but before making port in Mexico, actually transferred the two over to Mexican authorities before hitting land. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to bring us back stateside and take us over to Baltimore, where this was the scene this past week when a fire broke out with multiple vessels involved at Anchorage Marina in Baltimore's Inner Harbor. The call came in around 9 a.m. alerting authorities. The Coast Guard launched one of their 45-foot response boats, and the City of Baltimore's fire department and their natural resources department all launched vessels to the scene as well. Upon arrival, they found two vessels fully engulfed in flames and quickly went to work to try and put the fires out. Upon further investigation, it turns out that there was actually somebody on board one of the boats at the time the fire broke out with his dog. Fortunately, the owner of the vessel and the dog were able to successfully get off the boat before things got out of control. The Baltimore Fire Department was able to successfully extinguish one of the blazes with the boat staying afloat. Unfortunately, the second vessel did not quite have the same fate. As the fire department was working to try and get the fire extinguished, the boat decided to give up its battle and go ahead and sink. The vessel sinking at the time did have diesel fuel on board, so local personnel went ahead and deployed a containment boom to try and control any pollution from the fuel. Fortunately, in this situation, no injuries were reported, and due to the quick response from the Coast Guard and local officials, the fire was able to be contained to just the two vessels. Fiberglass is extremely flammable, and a lot of times these fires can get out of hand and spread very quickly. Our next story to make the boating news this week is going to bring us back over to the Gulf of Mexico, where Carnival Cruise Lines isn't the only one jumping in on the action this week, as Norwegian decided they were going to pull a rescue of their own as well. These images come from the Norwegian Prima, which was out enjoying a day of cruising in the Gulf of Mexico when all of a sudden it spotted a flashing light. Upon further inspection, this is what they pulled up upon: a makeshift vessel made with a metal sheet, foam, wood, and a patched-together sail with 12 occupants on board. The crew was able to use a mirror they had on board the vessel to flag down the cruise ship and let them know that they were in trouble. This crew had been floating on that makeshift vessel for over 40 days at sea and had run out of food and were almost out of water. The Norwegian Prima wound up launching one of its rescue vessels to go pick the 12 occupants up and bring them on board the cruise ship. The cruise line then brought the migrants on board, offering them medical attention and food before turning them over to the Mexican authorities before their next port of arrival. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Boating News of the Week. If you ever see anything crazy happening out on your waterways, be sure to hit us up on Facebook or Instagram and let us know, and you might see your stories over here. Just like Lance Roche, Adam Coolidge, and Audrey did this week. And if you guys haven't already, go ahead and drop an anchor on the subscribe button here.